You walk through the neon-lit, rain-slicked streets of your daily life, utterly convinced that your mind is an impenetrable fortress. You trust the signals your eyes and ears feed to your brain. You believe your memories are objective recordings. This innocent, arrogant assumption is exactly why you are prey. We are not talking about simple liars or everyday manipulators. We are talking about the apex predators of the human psychological landscape. Cult leaders, corporate sociopaths, and Machiavellian operatives who understand that objective reality is a fragile, mathematically flawed construct. They know that your sensory apparatus is vulnerable, desperate for validation, and easily hijacked. They do not attack your arguments. They attack your baseline perception of existence. They tear open the abyss, looking inside your mind to replace your foundational reality with a script of their own design. I am the architect, and what I am about to hand you is classified intelligence, a decoded masterclass on the darkest psychological warfare ever waged against the human psyche. The objective today is not to harm, but to immunize. By exposing the exact blueprints these predators use to shatter reality, you will learn to build an impenetrable fortress, the sovereign mind. You will learn to recognize the invisible cages designed for you, and you will learn how to break them. But before we descend into the mechanics of their illusions, you must anchor yourself. You must establish the foundational code of your cognitive defense. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I am the sole architect of my reality. Their illusions break against the fortress of my sovereign mind. Listen closely, because the first maneuver the predator uses against you relies on your biological terror of standing alone. They weaponize what I call the consensus mirage. Humans are deeply terrified of cognitive isolation. If the herd moves left, your brain will violently reject the impulse to move right. The predator knows that if they can orchestrate a multi-channel environment of social proof that directly contradicts your sensory reality, your brain will eventually rewrite its own code. Consider the chilling reality uncovered in Muzaffar Sharif's Autokinetic effect experiment of 1935. Sharif locked subjects in a pitch-black room and projected a single, stationary dot of light. Because of the natural, microscopic twitches of the human eye, the stationary light appeared to move in the darkness. When asked alone, subjects gave wildly different estimates of how far the light traveled. But when Sharif introduced confederates, actors instructed to confidently state a fabricated, unified distance, the subjects abandoned the truth of their own visual reality. They conformed to the group's lie. The false consensus literally overwrote their visual reality. Predators manufacture this dark room in your everyday life. When you correctly identify a toxic flaw, a corporate danger, or a hidden agenda, the predator surrounds you with a coordinated echo chamber. Multiple independent voices will casually, confidently deny what you saw. They won't argue. They will dismiss your truth with unified, chilling boredom. The sovereign mind neutralizes this by embracing the cold wasteland of isolation. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus observed, it is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them. The sovereign mind demands empirical proof, refusing to let a fabricated consensus blur the sharp lines of its own perception. If 5 people tell you the sky is green while you see blue, you do not adjust your eyes. You recognize the conspiracy. But the predator does not stop at controlling the consensus of facts. They control the consensus of panic. This brings us to the terrifying utility of manufactured apathy. Panic and urgency are socially regulated phenomena. If the herd is calm, the prey will willingly burn alive rather than scream. We know this because of Latane and Darley's infamous smoke-filled room study in 1968. Subjects were placed in a room to fill out paperwork when thick, billowing smoke began pouring through the vents. When alone, 75% reported the smoke immediately. But when placed with 2 undercover actors instructed to ignore the smoke, rub their eyes, and simply keep writing, an astounding 90% of the real subjects sat in the suffocating haze, doing absolutely nothing. The social proof dictated that everything is fine, and so they suppressed their own survival instincts to comply with the room's artificial normalcy. The Machiavellian predator uses this to invalidate your alarm systems. When they commit a transgression or manufacture a crisis that destroys your boundaries, they orchestrate absolute dead-eyed apathy in your environment. They act profoundly bored. They treat your entirely justified panic as an embarrassing, hysterical overreaction. By refusing to acknowledge the smoke in the room, they force you to choke down your own survival instincts. To defend against this, the sovereign mind must decouple its internal alarm from the environment's reaction. You must trust your adrenaline. If you smell smoke, you kick down the door, regardless of how calmly the wolves are sitting at the table. Once your real-time perception is destabilized, the predator reaches backward into the timeline. They engage in retroactive memory implantation. Your memory is not a video file locked in a vault. It is a fragile, real-time reconstruction process, highly susceptible to external contamination. Dr. Elizabeth Loftus proved the terrifying elasticity of the human past in her 1995 Lost in the Mall technique. Loftus successfully implanted entirely false childhood memories into subjects simply by having family members corroborate a fabricated story. By mixing true environmental details with a fictional event, a quarter of the subjects not only believed the lie, but began actively hallucinating new sensory details, what the fake rescuer looked like, how terrified they felt, to support the implanted memory. The predator weaponizes this by planting seeds of a false history. They introduce a minor, fabricated detail into a past argument, casually having a third party corroborate it. Remember when you lost your temper and said, over time, your brain tries to bridge the cognitive gap, subconsciously generating false memories to make sense of the new evidence. They rewrite your history to create undeniable leverage over your present. The sovereign mind defends against this by maintaining an immaculate internal ledger. As the philosopher Jean Baudrillard warned, the simulacrum is never that which conceals the truth. It is the truth which conceals that there is none. You must never allow another human being to hold the pen that writes your autobiography. If they cannot rewrite your past, they will simply crush your cognitive resistance under the paralyzing weight of the authority disorientation. Rationality ceases to function when confronted with the symbols of absolute, unquestionable power. We are biologically wired to obey the aesthetic of authority, even unto death. In 1966, Psychiatrist Charles Hofling proved this by calling nurses on a hospital floor, introducing himself as an unknown Dr. Smith. He ordered them to administer 20 milligrams of a fictional drug called astratan to a patient. This violated every rule. The dose was double the lethal limit on the bottle. Orders could not be taken over the phone, and the doctor was a phantom. Yet 21 out of 22 nurses prepared to blindly administer a lethal dose simply because a confident voice claimed the title of doctor. The predator wraps their deception in the vocabulary, posture, and clinical phrasing of absolute expertise. They wear the aesthetic of power to bypass your logic center, forcing your brain to default to servile compliance. The sovereign mind neutralizes this by ruthlessly stripping away titles. The sovereign mind judges the geometry of the argument, not the uniform of the one speaking it. It demands to see the raw data, completely immune to the predator's aggressive eye contact or clinical jargon. As the predator realizes you are resisting their authority, they will deploy a more insidious, slow burn tactic, the expectancy mirror. Identity is terrifyingly fluid. If a psychological environment consistently treats you like you are losing your grip on reality, you will begin to unconsciously act out that exact instability. The blueprint for this psychological infection was discovered in Rosenthal and Jacobson's 1968 Pygmalion effect experiment. Researchers administered cognitive tests to students and then lied to the teachers, claiming certain randomly selected children were intellectual growth spurters. By the end of the year, those randomly selected students showed massive, tangible increases in their actual IQ. The teachers' subconscious expectations had altered their micro-behaviors, which literally manifested a new cognitive reality in the students. Predators reverse engineer the Pygmalion effect. They will consistently and subtly treat you as if you are emotionally unstable, forgetful, or paranoid. They will look at you with gentle, condescending pity. "Are you feeling okay today? You've been acting so erratic." When you rightfully get defensive, they use your defensiveness as proof of your instability. Over time, you absorb these toxic micro-cues, internalize the expectancy, and literally become the unstable wreck they designed you to be. The sovereign mind shatters the expectancy mirror by remaining completely detached. As Carl Jung stated, people don't have ideas, ideas have people. Do not let the predator's idea of you infect your nervous system. Meet their condescending pity with a cold, impenetrable stare. Give them absolutely nothing to reflect. If they cannot slowly mold you, they will force you to trap yourself using the dissonance wedge. When faced with undeniable evidence that proves them wrong, humans rarely admit defeat. Instead, they will double down on their delusion, rather than face the excruciating humiliation of being fooled. Leon Festinger chronicled this terrifying mechanism in his cognitive dissonance study of a doomsday cult. When the predicted date of the apocalypse arrived and nothing happened, the cult members did not abandon their beliefs. Instead, to resolve the agonizing psychological pain of having sold their homes for a lie, they aggressively proselytized, claiming their faith had actually saved the world. Contradictory evidence deepened their delusion. The Machiavellian predator manipulates you into making a small, public, irreversible decision based on a minor distortion of reality. Once you have staked your reputation on it, they slowly reveal the trap. They know your own ego will prevent you from admitting you were conned. You will begin to rationalize, justify, and construct bizarre alternate realities just to defend the cage they locked you in. The predator lets your own psychological self-defense mechanisms do the heavy lifting. The sovereign mind neutralizes the dissonance wedge through radical humility. You must be willing to suffer the momentary burn of looking like a fool to escape the cage. The sovereign mind cuts its losses immediately, recognizing that a bruised ego is a small price to pay for ultimate freedom. Finally, if all else fails, the predator will unleash the primal terror of categorical isolation. The human need to belong is a parasitic hunger. People will accept entirely fictional realities if it means securing a place in the dominant tribe. Henri Tajfel proved this in his 1970 minimal group paradigm. He divided strangers into groups based on utterly meaningless criteria, such as whether they overestimated dots on a screen or preferred one abstract painting over another. Instantly, subjects displayed extreme, vicious loyalty to their arbitrary in-group, heavily discriminating against the out-group to protect their meaningless tribe. The predator divides your environment. They create a highly exclusive, fabricated set of rules, inside jokes, and shared truths with everyone except you. They base this division on something entirely subjective. You suddenly realize you are trapped in the out-group. The pain of this categorical isolation is designed to compel you to abandon your own sensory reality and adopt the predator's fabricated metrics just to earn a place back at the table. They control the criteria for inclusion, so they control your reality. The sovereign mind defeats this by embracing the wasteland. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." The sovereign mind refuses to dye its soul in the colors of a poisoned tribe. It finds power in exile. It recognizes that being isolated by a group of manipulated pawns is not a punishment. It is a profound confirmation of your own strength. To understand the Perception Shatter Strategy is to walk through life with the veil finally lifted. You now possess the blueprint of the predator's labyrinth. You understand how they orchestrate the environment, manufacture apathy, hack your memories, and weaponize cognitive dissonance. They rely on the prey, trusting that the world is exactly as it appears. But you are no longer prey. You know that the social world is a malleable stage, highly subjective and easily rewritten by those with a dark agenda. When they attempt to surround your mind with a customized, impenetrable consensus, their illusions will break against your walls. You will not surrender your sensory data. You will not ignore the smoke. You will not apologize for the false memories they attempt to plant. Step out of the illusion, master the architecture of your own mind, and you will never be subjected to the reality-bending whims of a predator again. You are the final authority on your existence. Speak it into existence one last time. I am the sole architect of my reality. Their illusions break against the fortress of my sovereign mind.